Hey guys, it's Rich with your Monday spot on the Pagan Perspective. This week we're talking about fearing negative consequences. This week's topic comes from Moonstone Mama, who writes, I would like to contribute a topic. It's something that hasn't sat right with me for quite a while. I've noticed a lot of older members in the pagan/witchy community are very passive in their ways, particularly in my country. Now, they don't say what country that they're writing from, so I'm just going to hang a little lantern on that and just move on. It says that they are kind of paranoid and scared too, to the point where they're even afraid to perform protective spells in fear of possible negative consequences. They generally believe that if someone is hurting you, you should do absolutely nothing, because the universe/threefold law will sort things out for you, and that you would lower yourself to their level if you put up any type of defenses or protection. I personally don't believe that the universe works that way. I find it quite toxic to feed into such an attitude. I believe that magic is there to give back power to those who were once powerless. I'd like to know your opinions on this. Now, I'm going to try to chop this up into little tiny bits so they're easy to digest. The turning the other cheek, the being very overly passive, seems like a leftover from a very staunch Christian view of just letting people do what they do, and you pray that things get better and you don't actually do anything about it. It's a very passive lifestyle. You see this a lot, and I'm not saying that all of one type of religion is like this. I'm just going to leave that there. But you see this a lot in the Quaker type of aspect, where even though the Quakers had a lot to do with the justice system, a lot of them are very passive in the way that they approach life. They don't really engage in a, and I want to be very careful how I phrase this because I don't want to misrepresent them, but in the Quaker society, they don't really engage in anything that is overly disagreeable, even though that, again, they are the ones that we have to thank for part of our justice system. So they do believe in a justice type of way of being, but they don't believe in capital punishment and stuff like that. So yes, you do have that in a Christian sense. So I think some of the being overly cautious is kind of a carryover from a Christian aspect. So I want to set that there. The part of fearing to, or being afraid of performing protective spells, if you are setting up your protections, that is covering your own butt. And I find nothing at all wrong with that, because if you don't look out for yourself, there's not necessarily somebody else out there that will. Now, you can leave it up to the universe, you can leave it up to fate or destiny or whatnot, but there is something to be said about having to protect yourself and the way that you live your life. So I don't agree with not doing a protective spell or taking a defensive action in order to just be passive. You can put up a protective shield of sorts and still live a very passive life. It is making sure that certain things don't come into your energy field that you don't want there. So, for instance, I am an introvert for the most part. I'm not one of the extreme introverts, but I am very much an introvert. So whenever I go to the antique store where I have a booth and all that, and I'm part of a cooperative where we all do floor time, stuff like that. Whenever I'm dealing with customers or I'm dealing with other people who are working there with me, sometimes I have to make sure that I protect myself so that I don't get drained too quickly. There are some extroverts out there that will seriously just feed off of your energy. Whatever you put out there, they're going to take in, and that's how they are. And that's not necessarily a bad thing for them, and it's not something malicious from them. It's just making sure that you don't give too much of yourself that you cannot function. There are some days where I am a little bit less protective of myself, and I give a little too much of myself, and I come home very drained, very lethargic. So I don't like that feeling. I recharge my batteries at home. I am very much a homebody. Whenever I'm at home, I feel the best. So yeah, if you're an introvert, that's something that you definitely need to do whenever you're going out into the world and dealing with other people. So whenever you're dealing with protective spells, it's not necessarily that you're doing a defensive action to bounce anything back. It's just that sometimes you can only give so much of yourself, and you want to keep people from taking too much from you, because some people will take whether or not you're allowing them to take it. So it's just making sure that you're regulating yourself, and it's self-care, really. So taking care of yourself is not a bad thing. And I kind of want to, something that just came into my mind is with self-care. If you're a passive person and say you have, a cavity, you wouldn't say, oh, just let the cavity rot out my teeth and, it'll fall out on its own. No, you would go and you would have that cavity drilled out and you'd have it filled and, all that stuff. You would take care of yourself. You brush your teeth so these things don't happen. That's a way of protecting yourself. That's self-care. I think if you apply the same logic to a protective spell as a source of self-care rather than looking at it as a way of malicious intent to others that look to harm you, I think the way of viewing that changes dramatically. So the part about the universe or the threefold law sorting things out, if you look in the whole karmic realm, or in the karmic idea, karma doesn't necessarily happen in one lifetime. If you follow karma, it could happen in multiple lifetimes, especially if you are a believer in multiple lifetimes. Again, for me, the jury is still out on that. I don't know whether or not I believe in multiple lifetimes. I kind of do, and I kind of don't, and, we've done videos recently in the past, but karma really is about either working itself out on the long term, or working itself in the very long term over multiple lifetimes. So you can't really say that karma or the threefold law or the universe will work itself out in this lifetime, that the up-ins will come to this person in their lifetime. So looking at it that way, are you really wanting to suffer even more in this lifetime to possibly have karma or karmic retributions come to that person in the next lifetime? It doesn't seem logical to do that and have somebody steamroll over you. So that's not really a way of self-care for you, if that is your way of thinking. So I do agree that it can be toxic, and you can go down a very slippery slope whenever you're starting to think that, oh, things will just work out on their own, and that's how it is, and, we don't have to do anything. I think that magic is there for us for a reason, and us being able to tap into it is a way for not necessarily the powerless to have power, but for everybody to be on a level playing field as far as everybody can either do good or they can do bad with it. They can have positive intentions, negative intentions, however you want to view it. Everybody has the same playing field, and everybody can choose what they want to do. The only thing that I would absolutely stress, and I've done videos on this in the past, is think of the consequences and what could and could not come from it. Such as, if your way of thinking is that a protection spell on your home or on yourself is something that you view as malicious, is it in your intent to be malicious, or is it your intent to self-care? If your intent is to be malicious, maybe you're putting on like a mirror effect where everything bounces off and comes back to them 3 times over, and they will get hurt if they send anything to you. That can be a sort of malicious protective spell. However, if your intent is for more self-care, you can have it where anything that comes into this energy field or anything that comes into my bubble will be transmuted and be good for me rather than negative. It will have a positive effect rather than whatever is sent to you, whether it's positive or negative, it will transmute and be positive for you. So you can word a spell in that way. You can have it where any negativity just doesn't reach you and just dissipates. You can do different ways of spell casting that aren't necessarily malicious. They can be extremely it can have the intent of being extremely helpful, or it can have the intent of being hurtful, or it can have the intent of being passive where it just dissipates. So you can word your spell work in those ways, and I think that's something important to note here. So I think that's all that I have for this week. I think I've rambled on quite enough, and I think I have to edit this down because I think my rambling's gotten a little out of control on this one. I will be seeing you guys next week. Next week's a very long topic, so I have to do some research on that before I do recording on that. So, yeah. Anyway, I'm sorry about the lateness of this video. And until next time, may you guys have love, hugs, and ladybugs. Bye-bye.